Hello, Homestead. This is Mr. Giglio, and I'm coming to you with our weekly video message. Today is October 30th, the day before Halloween, so that's why I'm wearing a pickle costume here. Staff didn't think I would do this, so I did it on a dare. So hope you enjoy it. Also, continuing my tradition of coming to you from different places on campus. This is the Makerspace, or where we do engineering and robotics. It's a really great big classroom, and so I just thought it would be a fun place for me to kind of show you where we do robotics, where we do engineering, and we do other makerspace type stuff. So tell you what, let me get out of this costume and we'll get on with the show here. Okay, let me share my screen and get to the right spot and go ahead and present. So again, as I said, today is the day before Thanksgiving for Halloween. And going back to our new scale, again, it continues to work, so thank you very much. The first question was about rating Homestead on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being lowest, 10 being highest. We got 24 responses this week, so a couple more than we did last week, so thank you very much for that. We definitely received a high score of a 10 and a low score of a 1, same as last week. Average of our score was a little bit lower than last week. We were 7.05, we're at 6.04. Again, not a scientifically representative sampling here, but just showing you kind of where we are. There definitely was a little bit more negative tinge to some of the stuff this week, and a lot of it had to do with, I think, people just being tired of the pandemic and being tired of being at home and tired of remote learning, and I can certainly understand that. So again, when we looked at when I asked them what were some of the reasons that you would have rated us in that area, and again, I definitely summarized and synthesized a lot here because there were 24 different answers and sometimes multiple answers within those. But for the higher ratings, they talked about how the teachers and staff are really working hard, going the extra mile, really doing a much better job than the emergency semester where we kind of were figuring things out. They really commented on that there seemed to be increased chances for learning and providing a more rigorous curriculum. And they also appreciated our efforts to try and make some more connections for students, whether it was things like advisory or things they're doing during class or some of the increased activities that are starting to happen right now. And I'll get into that a little bit later too. And again, looking at some of the lower ratings, I think just about everybody who rated us in a lower number there talked about remote learning and how they just don't like it and they feel it's harmful and hard. And again, don't disagree that it's not the ideal situation. And again, we'll get into more of that because there were some questions about our plan for coming back, so I'll get to that. There were a couple mentions about how office hours are really hard to get into, which is kind of a good problem to have. Last semester, kids weren't really using office hours. They weren't going to them and getting help from teachers. This year, they're obviously getting more help, but it's also clogging up those appointment times. Just so you know, it wasn't a guarantee in person either when we have tutorials that students get to see or talk directly to a teacher, because sometimes, different times are busy. But we totally hear you. We're looking for other ways to try and expand hours or opportunities for students to get some one-on-one attention. So stay tuned for those. Those should be coming up. Several comments definitely about the homework load. And, again, I hear it. We'll talk about homework in a little bit. It's one of the other questions that's out there. And so, I know what must be compounding that a bit is being at home the whole time, and everything you do is kind of homework right now. So, but definitely hearing some concerns, and we're looking at some of the data that's talking about how long kids are spending, and we'll be discussing that as a staff, but I'll talk about that later. And again, Schoology being sort of one of the continual things on the low rating end that people don't like. With the question, what are you finding valuable here at Homestead during remote learning? Many people mentioned the flexibility that they're seeing from teachers. They really appreciated that. They're really seeing compassion and support coming from teachers. They do talk about communication coming home, whether it's this video or other emails or information coming from on Schoology or through Schoology. They also, a lot of people mentioned how important office hours were, and they really appreciated those, even though, again, that you'll see on the negative side that or the lacking side, that there's some concern about the office hours not being available. People have also mentioned how much they like the Wednesdays because it does give a break and a different kind of change of pace for everybody. And someone wrote this one. I thought this was a good one to add. So I don't have to figure out how to get my student to and from school. That is true. You just got to make sure they wake up and turn the computer on. But again, thanks for that one. I thought that one made me laugh. So thank you for that one. What has been lacking? Again, you'll see, as I mentioned every time in surveys, that again, when people have varying opinions, and there's nothing wrong with their opinions, they're having different experiences based on different situations. So when we're seeing some of the negative stuff, there is a lot of, we want to be back in school. We don't think teachers are teaching, which is opposite of what they just said in the previous slide. Again, Schoology coming up as an issue in there, office hours being an issue. That there's not enough social activities, and we'll go into a little bit more about some social activities in a few slides down. But yeah, in remote learning, it's very hard to get together, right, and do things. We're very limiting in what we can do anyway. There was kind of a question about our courses covering all materials, and I don't think they meant it as, you know, how do we know that they're doing it, and can we make sure that that's happening? Maybe that's what's lacking. And someone specifically mentioned, and I wanted to point this one out, that I'm looking for help for my student who has an IEP. Which not all students have, but what they didn't put a name there, so I can't respond to you in person or privately, but what I would suggest is you talk to your case manager, and if your case manager is not being responsive or hasn't been helpful, talk to the department lead, who is Janice Swearingen, or you can even talk to the administrative liaison to the resource department, who's Terry Hannigan. But there are some things that are going to be coming up soon to be helping students, especially those on an IEP. And so hopefully your case manager will be talking about that as well. But yeah, you have you should be contacting those folks because they can definitely help out, or a counselor. Your counselor is also a good person to contact. So moving into the questions part of the survey, what plans are in place to return to school given our county has gone to the orange tier? This question comes up every week, and so, but there's also some new information, so I thought I would kind of recycle some of the information and give you some new information. So again, our district has decided we are out for the semester, so please, don't think we're coming back before then, because we're not. And I don't mean that in a negative or mean way, but that's just the agreement we've made, and that's how teachers have been planning their lessons. And so at this point, where we've made it past the halfway point of the semester, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we're going to keep moving forward, because anyway, that was the agreement we made way back in, July. Now, what we are doing is we are starting to bring back certain groups of students, not for direct instruction, but for services and supports. And again, that could be students who need special education assessment. It could be students who have specific issues and learning disabilities, or that they're English learners. A lot of different things that we might bring back some groups, small groups of less than 5 to support and serve. And again, not to directly instruct, not to give them classroom instruction, but to work with them briefly to get them on track, because they may be falling through the cracks. We have been, since August, there have been various groups of conditioning pods that are here on campus. And what that looks like is some of our athletics. It could be some different groups. I'll go into that in a little bit as well, what groups are here on campus. But we do have some folks that are coming back on campus in the afternoons to stay in shape as part of the organized sports that we have, as well as band, that kind of thing. What we are having right now is, and this may sound weird when we're talking about things opening up, that we have, we're looking to be more strict on our safety protocols. And that's because if and as we start bringing back more students and more people, that means more people are going to start mixing and start having contact. So we really have to make sure that our protocols are up to date, enforced, and are fair. So we definitely have our district safety protocol committee that's sitting down and discussing these improved strategies. And those should be coming out again very shortly. They are based on what the county and the state are requiring of us. But really, when we are talking about operating as a school, the county guidelines are really what's going to drive what we're able to do. So right now, with their current guidelines, we can't bring kids back for in-person learning. We can do these small little groups, one-offs, that kind of thing. But the county guidelines require 6 feet between desks. And in classrooms, when you start to move, 6 feet between desks, it means you have to start to eliminate the number of students that are in classroom, or reduce the number of students that are in a classroom. So some kids will have to stay home, some kids will have to be here. That's kind of that traditional hybrid. However, they're also saying limited to no movement between classes and groups, which is the exact opposite of what we do here in high school, because every period you go with a new group of people, a new teacher, a new classroom. So you are constantly mixing. That's not a good thing in this time, obviously. And you have one adult that supervises you the whole time. And again, that is not something that we have in place either. So that's fine for elementary schools. It's not fine for middle and high schools. So even though we're into that orange tier and seemingly looking good, some of those restrictions are just too restrictive for us to be able to do anything on an effective wide scale basis. The thing that I'm concerned about as the principal, and I hope you're concerned about as well too, is some of the data that's coming out right now. That there is, that has been reported, there's over 500,000 new cases. Oops, what happened to my screen there? Someone just called me on the phone. Sorry about that. So it messed up my screen. There have been 500,000 new cases in the US in the last 7 days. And in each of those days, they've been breaking some of the daily averages. So that's a scary number of folks that are getting new cases of COVID. 41 states out of our 50 are increasing, and that includes California, even though Santa Clara right now seems to be in a pretty decent, Santa Clara County that is, seems to be in a pretty decent place. There are counties around us that are starting to spike. So that's a pretty scary thing. And we're still in pretty much our warm weather season, right? It's October, and it's supposed to be 80 degrees out on Halloween night, or 82 degrees is what I just saw on my phone. So it's not even cold and flu season here yet. And so what happens with cold and flu season is that, you know, your defenses go down, aerosols are spread a little bit more easily because people are inside more often than they are outside. So it really does increase. This is why you're seeing an increase in some of those areas that are hitting cold and flu season. And even a little bit more frighteningly, countries like France, Germany, and England have started to shut down again. And again, they're definitely hitting into their winters and their cold season. And usually we're a week or two behind the trend with where our cases go. So there's some scary news out there right now that doesn't look good. We are currently looking good, but you know, I guess the next couple of weeks are really going to be important in terms of seeing where we go and what the county is going to come back and whether they're going to move us back into a more restrictive area or they're going to continue to open up. So waiting to hear there. Again, I think I can reiterate for all the students and staff, or at least for the staff, because you know, I don't see the students, that we definitely want to be back. It's better to be back, and so, but we just can't do it right now. So hopefully that changes, and hopefully these numbers don't continue in the way that they are. There was a question about why did we switch to Schoology at this particular time, and I think maybe a lot of us are asking that question, but this was something that we had been planning for several years. Actually, going back the last couple of years, when our contract was starting to come up, we started piloting some new and different learning management systems. And so we were anticipating a switch out of Schooloop. We've had it for a long time. We saw some of its limitations. We wanted something that was a little bit more robust and could connect more with like Google Drive and those kinds of things. And so, you know, when our contract ended, we knew it was ending. We'd already started to end it with everyone, and we had chosen Schooloop. Then everything started to shut down. So clearly not the greatest timing. You know, but what's true is happening is that, you know, Schoology has issues. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say it's the most perfect situation ever. There's some issues and we're working through those. But it is a better system than Schooloop, right? Everyone was used to Schooloop. Everyone liked, or actually people complained about Schooloop when it was during that time. There are a lot more interactive features. There's a lot more things that allow us to do things while we're on remote learning. There are things that allow us to connect more and have more options within our assignments. So there is some increased abilities that we couldn't get with Schooloop. And what we're noticing is that, yeah, we're making some mistakes as we're going through it and we're learning it. And again, we've only been using it for the past 4 or 5 months. You know, these systems take 1 year to 2 years to truly master. So we're still in the learning phase of it. We're getting better. We're figuring out some of the tricks. Some of them are our issues. Some of them may be your issues in how you do things. Some of them but some of them are also Schoology's, and we're reporting to them and we're trying to have them work through them. But you know, they're working through their softwares and their systems to make sure that, you know, see where those issues might lie. So we definitely have a dialogue going back and forth. So yeah, it's been difficult. It's been a little frustrating at times, but again, this is kind of like driving a Porsche compared to a Honda. Hondas are great, you know, but Porsche has a little bit more fun to it and a lot more things it can do. But you may also, if you don't know how to use the Porsche yet, you know, it might be harder to drive or so. So again, we're learning, we're getting better at it. We will continue to get better as we go along. And we're not switching out of Schoology anytime soon, because that would be even a harder thing to do, to switch out again and go to a third system, which would really be problematic. So we are sticking with it, and we're improving our learning as we go along. there was a question about how do teachers know if students are actually learning in this system? And because you know that testing, as we've talked about, is a hard thing to do. When we talk about assessing learning, there are two types of assessments out there. There are what we call formative assessments, and there are summative assessments. So a summative assessment is quite frankly, it's like an autopsy, right? After a person's died, you do a medical examination, and it says, here is what that person died from, right? And so in a testing situation, this is, we've gone through the whole unit or the whole semester. What has that student learned? And this is the final exam that we're going to look at. A formative assessment is like a checkup when you go to the doctors and they, let me listen to your heart, let me take an x-ray, let me do some of those things. There's a variety of things that you can do in a formative assessment to kind of see the health of the student in terms of their learning. And so again, not all assessment is formal. It's not all about taking a test or writing down the right answer. There are steps along the way, some of them much more easier, some of them very low stakes, very low points or no points, but they also give us a whole lot of information. The questioning strategies that teachers use, that is meant to elicit responses from students to see, do you get this? Do you not get this? Can you explain it a little bit further? Can you extrapolate information? Can you move through it? Right? That's really why we ask questions in classrooms. And so that's a way to we're not tallying up points for each question you answer there, but that helps the teacher understand where students are going and if they're getting it. Just how you take notes and what you're taking in your note taking, that's a form of assessment that we can be looking at. Are they taking notes? Are they not taking notes? Are they taking incorrect notes? When we do things like warm-ups, right, that's a way to kind of practice in a low stakes way, or even introduce ideas to people, see how much they do. You'll hear a lot of students talking about taking exit tickets, and that's a thing at the end of maybe a question or a little problem at the end of the period that they do quickly fill out and send to the teacher. And that's meant to show the teacher, do they understand, they got an idea of what we just talked about, right? And then that helps them inform them for the next lessons. Things like homework, which people don't like, is a form of assessment. It's a form of practice as well too, but it's a way to say, are students getting this? Can they practice it a little bit more, right? And so on down to quizzes and projects and presentations, right? The higher stakes. So just about everything we do in a classroom is assessment. It is checking for understanding. It is checking to see if kids are learning. It's then also how you intervene or extend that learning that becomes important. And that's what some of these assessments do. So don't think of just a big test as the only way for us to understand if a student knows it or not. A lot of times in college, you sit through a big lecture hall and at the end of it, you take a test of whether you learned it or not. That's not how we do things in high school. It is more about just continually giving in little bits of information, checking if they're understanding it, practicing it, checking again, that kind of thing. So that's how we know if they're learning or not. And then also ultimately we look at the grade data and we try to make some adjustments as we go along. Question about, can we have conditioning clubs on campus? So a specific club about, getting kids to work out and to do things. Not really, but there are things that we are doing, and I referred to this a little bit earlier. If you are part of a sports team, there is voluntary conditioning. Some teams are doing it, some teams aren't, but you can see here's a list of some of our folks: football, cross country, tennis, water polo, that are doing conditioning. They're not practicing, they're not playing. It's getting in shape or trying to stay in shape to get ready, because right now it's about to be November, and in a little over a month and a half they're going to start practicing for football if everything goes well. So we want them to be in shape when they hit the field, because we don't want injuries, that kind of thing. And those are some pods of up to 20 kids with one adult. We do have activities who are requiring some on-campus quote-unquote conditioning, things like band. I mean, band is, the marching band, they're trying to figure out their routines. They're trying to practice their instruments. They can do it outside, except the aerosol producing instruments, the wind instruments, you can't really do those, but all the others can. But like journalism and yearbook have had to do some work to get their additions done or to meet their deadlines. Even robotics has done some stuff to get ready for some online competitions and that kind of thing. But for a new club, you do have to go through an acceptance process. There is a way to become a new club. And so you can check in with the activities department and the ASB students, and they can show you how to do that. If you go to our website, there's a link to show you how to do that. This question was specifically about ninth graders, and there's a way to encourage some of the ninth graders. all ninth graders take PE. And so there's, at least they have that built into part of their day. Again, I know it on remote learning, it's not as robust as when we're sitting there running in the field and playing basketball and doing those kinds of things, but they do have other ways of showing students how to stay in shape. And they have a really cool app that they use called Volt that actually can log workouts and suggest workouts and do that kind of thing. So you might want to check that out with your students and see if there's anything that you can do along with them. Is there a way to encourage students to get away from their screens for downtime? And I use that word encourage because what the question was implying was like, can we give extra credit? Can we do that kind of thing? And yeah, we definitely encourage that. We definitely can encourage that, but it's really impossible for us to enforce or monitor if students are doing that. So to give extra credit or something may not really be appropriate, or may not even be a way for us to even know if they did it or not. But, you know, some suggestions that we've been hearing from some of the mental health professionals and some of our medical professionals that we've been talking to, you know, a way to help students get away from their screen time is to enforce some rules, like no electronics after a certain time, or none in your bedroom at night when you go to sleep. Students will wake up in the middle of the night to check texts and stuff. We'll see that kids are sending us emails at weird hours. And so we'll try and might have conversations with them. But again, don't cut off electronics, you know, at 5 o'clock at night, because they may have homework to do and they may need to finish it. So you got to be kind of flexible in that regard. But same thing with, you know, through your plans, when you have your data plans, you can actually limit when students can be on, you know, online. And so you might try and cut off some of their access in the, you know, midnight 6 a.m. or whatever hours. Again, don't do it really early in the day because they may be trying to finish up a project and turn in some homework, but you know, there's some options you can look. So check out your data plans with your phones and see what they can do. Other than that, you know, again, I think you guys have more of a chance of getting them to get up and out and do things like with family walks or family dinners, or, hey, let's go, you know, throw a Frisbee, or let's go, you know, pick flowers, do something. And so I definitely would encourage you to do that. Again, we can encourage that, but we can't really get students to do that. One thing right now, as you can see, I'm at a standing desk, or actually I'm technically just have some boxes on top of a table. But what I do all day long is I stand, and that I do some exercises. And this was taught to me by one of our PTSA guest speakers, who also a former Homestead parent, Dr. Sinha. And he has some exercises. You can put your legs up on tables and stretch and move. You don't just have to sit all day long. So I would actually encourage your students to try and do some standing while they're in class, because that might actually help get some of their nervousness and fidgetiness out. And they can also do some stretching and stay limber while they do it. I know that sounds weird, but I tell you, I've been doing it ever since he told me, and it's been great. One kind of fun thing I think I would just throw out there is that our school climate office holds these socials on Wednesdays after advisory. Now, it is online, so it's not a break from screen, but it is a little bit of silliness and fun. They did a scavenger hunt the other day. They've done games. They're doing different kinds of things to just give kids a break and do something fun and silly for a bit. So check out that. And again, you'll look for the bulletin announcements about that, and get on the Zoom link and maybe encourage your kids to enjoy some of the fun with that. So that's a good fun one. I think this question has been around since the beginning of schools. Can we reduce or eliminate homework? And again, I know this is coming from a serious concern that a lot of people are feeling frustrated that there's a lot of homework. And we are having a conversation with our staff. We are collecting data, as I said, to say, you know, what are kids really spending their time on? How is the homework affecting what's going on? And right now we are looking at things like holding class in a traditional way versus a flipped way, which a lot of times the flipped classroom is just, you know, a traditional classroom is you get a lecture, you know, you take notes, you do some activities, and you go home and do homework. Then a flipped classroom is that lecture part, that sort of beginning to dive into it, is done online. And so maybe you watch a video, the teacher records a lecture or a PowerPoint, so they're asking you to look at that, and then when you come in, you study. And again, depending on the way that's being done, that might be influencing the homework or not. And so that might be an interesting thing to look at for your student to see how that may or may not be affecting, but that is also something we're looking at. You know, again, when you're looking at homework, it's not an all or nothing kind of situation. There is an upside to homework. You know, actually, the way I wrote this is, if we eliminate homework, there is an upside to eliminating homework, right? Or reducing it. You may have some more free time. It's less for the teachers to grade, right? It gives people back some time, both on the teacher end and on the student end. The downside, though, is that it starts to slow down those opportunities for students to learn, get feedback, and just to practice, right? So yes, I know, see, well, I don't want to practice, but without practicing, a lot of times students come in very unprepared. They kind of forget what they did the day before or 2 days before that. And even professional athletes don't stop practicing. They definitely try to work on things and improve, right? So that's what homework is. Again, I get that there is a wide variation in what people's experience is with homework, and we are having that conversation and trying to work on it, though. That was our last question. That moves us on to our important dates and info. Just a reminder, no school on Veterans Day, 11/11. So please make your plans accordingly. There are some PSAT signups. Those are the practice SAT signups starting November 2nd through 4th. There are opportunities to do it online and opportunities to walk up to the school and pay. So please go to our website and check that out. Those are in the bulletin as well. There is a Cash for College FAFSA, it's hard to say, application workshop on 11/5 held by our guidance department and by our college and career counselor. There is a PTSA meeting coming up, and that's an impact, and they're going to do the general meeting and then impact teen driving workshop. This is for both parents and students, so please encourage your students to come along. Usually we get mostly parents. It'd be nice to see some students in there. You don't have to drag them home back to school. You can just drag them to the computer again. Again, I know it's screen time, but on November 18th, 6:45, this is usually a very popular one and lots of great information for new and learning drivers or soon to be drivers. Talking about athletics, your physicals and concussion testings are going to be due in December. So, go to our website. If you're in season 1, that is, we want season 1 athletes. That's going to be due on November 11th. Again, go to our website. You'll see more information there. And just a reminder that there is food service every Wednesday in the student lot from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if your family needs some extra help with the food, that's a great place to go in there. Our cafeteria crew is working super hard to produce lunches. They actually, when you go there, you get 6 lunches or 6 meals. And so you definitely get a lot of food that can help stretch that budget out, because I know there's a lot of economic hardship going on out there. And so I want to make sure we're helping our kids stay healthy and help maybe relieving some of the stress for you as well. So again, that is our video message for the week. I hope you have a safe and happy Halloween. Again, with all that data I had earlier about COVID, please remember to wash your hands and wear a mask and stay socially distanced, and know that as we start to get closer to family with some of the holidays coming up, that's where they're concerned about some of the super spreader events happening. So again, please be careful, stay safe. That'll help us get back to where we need to be, and maybe we can buck the trend and get rid of COVID in this area and try to get back to school. So that would be a great way to help us help you. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a great day and weekend, and we will talk to you later.